Golden lightning strikes down violently over a dense forest amidst a heavy, dark downpour. The black-haired warrior stands amidst a field of defeated black-clad assassins in the heavy rain. He counts 64 slain enemies through a bloodied smile as the heavy rain continues. Scarred blue-haired leader claps mockingly as he approaches with a new group of assassins. The blue-haired leader mockingly praises Wu Tianglin, expressing astonishment at his survival and demanding to know how he still stands. Gritting his teeth, the heavily wounded warrior stands his ground, breathing heavily in the rain. The enemy leader lightly steps closer, his feet barely touching the white grassy ground. The blue-haired leader points mockingly, questioning how his opponent survived his destructive sword technique. Grimly holding his sword, Wu Tianglin tells his arrogant opponent that he knows absolutely nothing. The blue-haired villain sneers, predicting that his heavily injured opponent will drop dead any second. Three masked assassins leap from above to execute the heavily weakened, arrow-pierced warrior. With a single, devastating slash of his sword, he cuts down the descending attackers in midair. As blood splatters on the ground, the dying warrior silently reflects that he became too greedy. Wu Tianglin notes he has slaughtered half of the Xinhuang Moon clan, while his rival accepts the heavy casualties as a necessary price to eliminate him. The blue-haired leader leaps high into the air, preparing to deliver a final, decisive blow. He lands gracefully in the wet mud, positioning himself for a powerful closing strike. A massive group of enemies surrounds the lone, heavily bleeding warrior from a distance. Wu Tianglin watches his foes from behind, his vision fading as the downpour persists. The grinning villain asserts that his dying opponent can no longer unleash his transcendent technique. Wu Tianglin mocks his enemies' endless talking and challenges them to attack all at once. The enemy leader snaps in fury, screaming Wu Tianglin's name with an enraged expression. Leaping into the air, the villain unleashes a massive blue slash to end the battle. The enemy leader strikes downward with blinding speed, aiming directly at the defenseless warrior. A brilliant white light flashes as a sharp blade cuts cleanly through the rainy air. The villain mocks his target, only to be sliced in half mid-boast by an unseen counterattack. A brutal cross-slash completely obliterates the enemy leader in a spray of blood and rain. Standing calmly, the heavily injured warrior questioningly repeats the name of his slain enemy's technique. Wu Tianglin looks down coldly, questioning if his dead foe even understood the technique's true nature. Torrential rain continues to pour heavily from the dark, cloud-filled sky, washing away the blood. Under a flash of lightning, the victorious warrior stands alone among the lifeless bodies. A beautifully crafted sword stands impaled in the ground as he mutters a final count. Leaving a gruesome trail of blood behind him, the dying warrior stumbles away into the forest. He clutches his heavily bleeding side, desperately trying to keep himself upright through sheer willpower. With his strength entirely depleted, the warrior finally collapses onto the muddy, grassy ground. He lies on the ground, his eyes glassy and blank as death slowly approaches him. Wu Tianglin apologizes to Yanmei, expressing deep regret for breaking his promise to return home. A heavy, somber silence falls over the dying warrior as his consciousness begins to slip. He pulls a blood-stained wooden block against his chest as he fades away. Wu Tianglin regrets not leaving behind a legacy or something tangible for his loved one. He lies completely still on the vast green field, his life force entirely gone. A delicate purple flower sways gently on a branch as a quiet breeze passes through. His fading eyes weakly shift as he suddenly senses a presence nearby in the quiet forest. A young brown-haired boy stands before him, offering the small purple flower with wide eyes. Wu Tianglin smiles weakly, asking the young boy what kind of plant he is holding. Under the starry night sky, the young boy stands quietly beside the dying, bloodied warrior. The young boy stares down in stunned silence, overwhelmed by the warrior's critical state. Strong gusts of wind blow green leaves across the dark, clear night sky. The young boy desperately digs a hole in the ground with a small wooden stick. Wu Tianglin forcefully chews the bitter purple flower, attempting to stabilize his failing body. Covered in sweat, the young boy pants heavily as he finishes digging in the dirt. Clinging to life, Wu Tianglin asks the young boy for his name. Looking up in confusion, the young boy quietly asks him why he wants to know. Wu Tianglin sadly realizes the boy has likely buried his own parents before. A dull thud echoes in the quiet forest as the boy continues digging. Wu Tianglin tells the boy to stop digging, offering him a secret martial arts manual instead. The boy stares back silently as the dying warrior tells him to see the wider world. The pragmatic boy rejects the offer, saying he would rather focus on his physical survival. Leaning heavily against a tree, Wu Tianglin ponders the boy's destiny. A weary but genuine smile touches the dying warrior's lips in the quiet forest. The boy predicts his own demise, prompting the warrior to roar with laughter in agreement. Chewing the bitter medicine, Wu Tianglin desperately tries to sustain his fading life force. The young boy watches him in silence, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and sorrow. Despite his fatal wounds, the warrior stubbornly refuses to give in without a fight. Standing beside the shallow grave, the boy quietly observes his strange companion. With surprising strength, the boy helps the heavily wounded warrior walk through the woods. Straining under the warrior's massive weight, the boy determinedly guides him forward. Wu Chonglin praises the boy's physical build, noting his excellent natural foundation. The warrior remarks on the boy's sharp, piercing eyes as they walk together. The warrior suggests a compromise, inviting the boy to become a low-tier martial artist. Showing no enthusiasm, the boy flatly declares his lack of interest in martial arts. The boy confesses he only stays because the warrior reminds him of his father. A somber silence falls over the warrior as he absorbs the boy's words. Reaching out his blood-stained hand, the fading warrior gently asks the boy to come closer. The warrior weakly admits that the boy reminds him of his late daughter. Enfolding the boy in a sudden, tight embrace, the warrior leaves him wide-eyed with shock. Smiling softly, the dying warrior expresses a bittersweet wish that the boy had been his son. Under the golden morning light, they share a poignant, quiet embrace in the forest. The warrior's strength finally gives out entirely, his head slumping lifelessly onto the boy's shoulder. The boy stands frozen with shock as the warrior's lifeless body collapses onto the grass. The boy inherits a legendary manual from the mysterious martial artist who expired before him. Years pass, and the boy, now a grown warrior with long auburn hair, swings his blade. He trains relentlessly in the forest, dedicating himself to mastering the inherited techniques. Cryptic illustrations in the old manual prove exceptionally difficult to fully comprehend. He adapts the teachings, printing the complex arts to perfectly suit his own body. A sharp, decisive strike cuts cleanly through the air as he refines his unique style. Seeking inner energy, he adopts a simple breathing technique, but quickly hits his limit. Exactly as predicted, he settles into his role as a humble, low-tier martial artist. He effortlessly slices falling leaves out of the air, displaying a surprisingly polished sword draw. Despite his basic foundation, he develops a drawing technique that looks impressively professional. He christens his customized simplified sword technique with a brand new name. Knowing the styles are vastly different, he refuses to use the manual's original name. The martial artist delivers a rapid sequence of slashes executing his modified forms. He notes the most glaring disparity between his customized style and the original manual. With an amused, self-deprecating smile, he admits the biggest difference is its complete lack of power. He jokingly brainstorms different poses and arm heights to look like a legendary master. Shifting his focus to simpler pleasures, he idly wishes for a hot bowl of soup. Unbeknownst to him, the massive tree behind him splits cleanly in two from his strike. The scene shifts as a pair of dark boots strides confidently across a red carpet. Keeping his eyes closed, the young master calmly walks deeper into the Grand Palace Hall. He bows his head slightly, ready to face whatever awaits him in the royal court. The auburn-haired warrior and a dark-haired master clasp their hands in a respectful bow. Countless elite warriors gather in the grand hall, lining the sides of a long red carpet. A confident black boot steps forward onto the beautifully patterned red carpet. Assembled martial artists bow deeply as the auburn-haired warrior walks past them. He strides silently down the grand hall, maintaining a calm and serious expression. A subtle amused smirk plays on the lips of the walking warrior. He breaks out in a cold sweat, wide-eyed with sudden sheer panic. The scene shifts to Manryong Fort, where factions recruit heavily during times of widespread civil war. A gray-haired clerk calls for the next recruit as Io Jaseo steps up to register. The mustache registrar casually asks the auburn-haired warrior for his name. He silently reflects that even a low-tier fighter like him can pretend to be a master. The clerk hands over the brush, telling the young man to write his own name. Io Jaseo confidently takes the calligraphy brush to write down his identity. With intense concentration, he prepares to write his name on the parchment. He elegantly brushes the 3 characters of his name onto the white scroll. The clerk is astonished that an ordinary martial artist can read and write calligraphy. Sweating slightly, the registrar suspiciously asks if he hails from one of the great Orthodox sects. He smiles emeraldly, knowing his own name is the only thing he actually knows how to write. The registrar reads his self-proclaimed title, admitting he has never heard of it before. When the warrior asks if there is a problem, the registrar quickly laughs it off. Assigned to Blue Room 19, the warrior celebrates his guaranteed meals before adopting a cool front. The blue rooms represent the middle tier between the clueless rabble and the true masters. Guided by an attendant, the auburn-haired warrior walks down the long wooden hallway. He plans to eat his fill and escape before the dangerous tournament begins. Delightedly catching the scent of delicious food, he happily anticipates a high-quality meal. He spots his fellow roommates dining and decides his best plan is to lie low. The 2 diners look up, prompting the warrior to worry that they look like trouble. Smiling attendant politely welcomes the new arrival and gestures for him to enter. His eyes narrow sharply as he warily assesses the dynamic in the room. Water is poured cleanly into a white ceramic cup on the wooden table. Holding his cup, the spiky-haired warrior directly asks the newcomer for his name. Introducing himself as Io Jaseo, he recalls that speaking less prevents exposing his lack of skill. The 2 roommates look on, completely fooled by the newcomer's silent, stoic posture. The spiky-haired warrior sets down his cup, accepting the brief introduction. Simgil introduces himself and points to his bald companion, Soguchi. Soguchi pauses mid-drink, his gaze sharpening as he speaks up. The bald warrior looks directly at Io Jaseo and asks about his sect. Io Jaseo claims he has no proper sect and only knows his family's inherited sword art. Soguchi drinks deeply, identifying himself and Simgyal as members of the Jong'an Alliance. Jaseo probes further, asking if they are associated with the famous Jongnan sect. Simgil smugly agrees, completely unaware that Jaseo is successfully baiting them. Jaseo explains his trick of dropping famous names to establish quick rapport and trust. He fabricates a dramatic story about a legendary Zhongnan master saving him from certain death. He acts out immense awe, loudly praising the unmatched skill of the Zhongnan master. Deeply moved, Simgil boisterously declares it an absolute honor to meet a survivor. The bald warrior offers to buy more drinks to hear the rest of the tale. Three roommates laugh together, fully enjoying the fabricated story over food and drinks. Jaseo smiles to himself, harboring no resentment as his deceptive plan works flawlessly. Bright daylight shines over the grand tiled roofs of the bustling fortress courtyard. Jaseo walks confidently through the courtyard, successfully blending in with the other martial artists. Jaseo narrows his eyes with intense focus as he approaches Monryong Fort. He marvels at the massive fortress, questioning if it was truly built with an enormous budget, and noting the heavily ruined halls. Observing the heavy repairs underway, he remarks on the solid construction work. Gleefully pumping his fist, he rejoices at the idea of eating and sleeping here for free for a month. A group of confident martial artists walks through the fortress courtyard, smiling amongst themselves. He smirks as a passerby complains about the fort letting in people with no real skill. With a carefree smirk on his face, he cheerfully whistles as he walks along. Strolling peacefully through the courtyard, he eagerly anticipates eating a hot bowl of soup for lunch. A gentle breeze sweeps through the trees, scattering green leaves across the bright blue sky. He turns around in confusion after catching a sudden fragrance in the air. A red-haired woman asks why he entered her women-only quarters, causing him to panic about walking into a restricted area. He apologizes politely, explaining that he was just walking and ended up there without noticing. The red-headed woman remains silent, warily scrutinizing him with an unreadable, deadpan expression. While he plans to slip away quietly, she smiles and suddenly asks for his name. Sweating nervously, he turns away while the young woman watches him with wide-eyed surprise. Panicking, he decides his decades of life experience dictate that he must never get involved with someone like her. She pops up behind his shoulder to ask if he came to apply as a warrior at the fort. While he tries to brush it off, she claps excitedly and cheers at the perfect timing. He politely asks what text he can do for her while silently planning to find an opening to escape. She challenges him to a duel, causing him to scream in absolute shock and disbelief. As he steps backward in shock, his boot accidentally stumbles over a small loose stone. He flails his arms and shifts his weight, desperately trying to maintain his balance on the ground. She admires him for facing her like a real man, while he frantically yells that it is a huge misunderstanding. He worries about the danger if he accidentally uses his primary fighting hand during their battle. As she attacks, he notes that he cannot simply refuse her challenge outright. He gasps in shock, sensing her intense inner energy as she prepares her strike. She delivers a powerful, sweeping palm strike that unleashes a vibrant wave of purple energy. Sliding backward, he desperately tells himself that he cannot afford to black out now. Clutching his chest in intense pain, he struggles to steady his breath after the impact. Gasping in pain, he laments that his hard-earned inner energy is draining away so easily. The young woman lands gracefully, looking surprised and pleased by the outcome of her strike. Her eyes widen in sudden realization as she closely observes her opponent's unexpected state. She silently wonders if he is completely fine after taking her true flower palm strike. While he calls her a brat, she excitedly concludes that he is a true master. With his back turned to her, he stands silently in the courtyard, nursing his hidden pain. Sweat dropping, he tells himself he must slip away as naturally as possible before he dies. She asks why he is acting like that as blood suddenly begins to pour from his nose. She cheers happily, celebrating that even a master cannot withstand her flower palm art. Covering his nose, he quickly praises her technique as an exceptionally impressive and powerful palm technique. She offers him a cloth, prompting him to wonder why she carries something like that around. She happily explains that everyone she hits with her Xianhua sword art gets a nosebleed, proving its unique effect. He screams in absolute exasperation, questioning her bizarre technique and lamenting his terrible mistake in getting involved with her. She suspiciously notes his resilience, asking why he is staring at her like that. She claps in excitement, deducing that he must be a skilled swordsman based on his weapon. Sweating profusely, he nervously covers his face in a desperate attempt to hide his anxiety. While he panics over his next move, she happily declares that she will go fetch her sword. She eagerly proposes a sword match using her Xianhua sword art, causing him to scream in despair. Back in his room, he sits quietly on a stool and carefully wipes his sword blade. He meticulously cleans his blade, noting that a master always tends to and cherishes their sword. He holds up his clean sword, reflecting that proper blade care easily projects the convincing aura of a master. A strong hand tightly grips the sheathed sword hilt, preparing to draw the clean blade. The drawn sword's polished steel reflects Jaseo's sharp, determined eyes as he prepares. Simgyo and Soguchi watch in awe as Jaseo carefully polishes his sword. Simgyo remarks that the auburn-haired warrior cleans his blade with a deeply reverent, expert touch. Io smirks inwardly, recalling that his professional blade polishing skills actually come from years of in-work. He confidently stands up and readies his sheathed weapon, maintaining his convincing master persona. Striking a majestic pose, the auburn-haired warrior holds his sword high to project a powerful aura. Io recalls his master's advice about living as a humble, low-tier martial artist for chivalry. He looks down at his finely polished blade, noting how perfectly it catches the ambient light. Twirling his sheath, he reflects that his current lack of skill requires maintaining a strong visual front. He sheathes his sword with elegant concentration, determined to look like a high-level master. Simgil praises the warrior, declaring that he and his sword seem completely unified in spirit. Io humbly brushes off the praise, claiming his sword is simply like an extension of his body. Soguchi suddenly rushes into the room, excitedly shouting that a brawl has erupted among the drifters. Simgil scoffs at the fighters' impatience, while Soguchi suggests going outside to watch the duel. Simgil initially dismisses the idea, stating they have no real interest in watching low-tier brawls. Soguchi reveals that the fighters are the infamous Poison Wolf Ibu and Thin-Face Sword. Hearing these notable names, both Simgil and Aojasio turn around in sudden, intense surprise. A massive crowd gathers in the stone courtyard to watch the two skilled drifters prepare to clash. Amidst the loud cheering, a mysterious cloaked figure warily observes the scene from within the crowd. Soguchi comments on the gathering crowd, noting both fighters are highly rumored to be skilled. Leading his roommates through the courtyard, Soguchi gestures toward the massive, excited crowd. Soguchi points out the fierce, eye-patch-wearing warrior holding chain-link cleavers as Poison Wolf Ibu. Soguchi identifies the agile, long-haired opponent leaping through the air as Thin-Face Sword. A sharp sword blade slices rapidly through the air with an impressive and lethal speed. Soguchi explains that Thin-Face Sword relies heavily on an exceptionally fast and agile combat style. A rough scarred hand raises a massive heavy cleaver axe high against the blue sky. Soguchi describes Ibu's heavy strikes and asks Simgil who he thinks will ultimately win. The three roommates stand in the crowd, watching the contrasting fighting styles with intense concentration. Soguchi analyzes that Thin-Face Sword holds a clear advantage in terms of pure technique. Simgil agrees, predicting that a longer fight will ultimately favor the agile swordsman's stamina. Soguchi nods in agreement, deeply impressed by his companion's tactical assessment of the duel. Simgil explains his reasoning, while Aojasio calmly suggests waiting to see the final outcome. Standing shoulder to shoulder, the three companions cross their arms to observe the unfolding battle. Gritting his teeth, Thin-Face Sword struggles to withstand the raw power of the heavy cleaver. Spectators note with surprise that Thin-Face Sword is continuously being pushed back by Ibu. Simgil praises Ojaseo's sharp insight, predicting that Thin-Face Sword is about to lose. Soguchi asks how he knew, prompting Aojaseo to begin explaining low-tier combat dynamics. Aojaseo's eyes widen in sheer terror as the red-haired girl suddenly pops up before them. The red-haired girl enthusiastically points him out, loudly labeling him as the Great Twin Nosebleeds hero. Aojaseo's sweat drops and remains completely silent, desperately wishing he could disappear on the spot. The girl comments on his token, while his roommates watch their strange interaction in utter confusion. She explains that everyone hit by her palm ends up bedridden, proving he is a true master. Aojaseo internally laments his terrible luck at running into the dangerous girl once again. He fake laughs and praises her technique before trying to casually slip away from the group. Soguchi shouts in surprise as Thin-Face Sword is utterly overwhelmed by his opponent's brutal offense. Poison Wolf Ibu roars in triumph as he delivers a brutal final strike to his opponent. Soguchi warns that both combatants will surely kill each other if the fight continues unchecked. Simgil notes the battle has turned lethal and wonders if anyone will step in to stop them. Simgil sighs and shakes his head, noting that since they are not masters, nobody will intervene. Simgil grimly crosses his arms, noting that the duel will only end in death. Ibu eagerly challenges his opponent to finish their duel, and Thin-Face Sword fiercely accepts. Aojaseo crosses his arms and sternly demands that they step aside and stop fighting. The red-haired girl approaches, reminding the auburn-haired warrior of his sudden disappearance yesterday. She happily invites the warrior to discuss swords, unaware of a sneaking assassin nearby. Aojaseo stares back in silent confusion, completely bewildered by her sudden friendly approach. A cloaked assassin stealthily throws a glowing pink hidden weapon from the courtyard shadows. Recognizing a flying projectile, Aojaseo quickly ducks to avoid the lethal hidden attack. An urgent warning echoes through the air, telling the young woman to watch out. Misinterpreting his defensive maneuver, she joyfully praises him for acting instead of talking like a hero. The deflected projectile spins wildly through the air after clashing against his metal blade. Aojaseo realizes with shock that the thrown weapon is heavily infused with powerful inner energy. A sharp blade grazes the red-haired girl's orange outer robe, tearing the fabric slightly. Terrified for her safety, the auburn-haired warrior screams out to warn her of the danger. Multiple glowing hidden blades spin rapidly through the sky, launching another deadly assault. The force of the attack knocks the girl off balance, throwing her back into the air. Iyojasio panics as the heavy residual energy from the deflected weapon disrupts his own balance. With a loud clang, the heavy cleaver collides fiercely against the polished steel blade. The two rival drifters grit their teeth in a fierce power struggle, their weapons locked. Standing between the combatants, Iyojasio blocks both weapons while the red-haired girl lies face down nearby. The gathered crowd of martial artists watches the unexpected intervention with wide-eyed shock. Soguchi and Simgil watch in amazement, realizing their roommate has stepped in to stop the duel. Iyojaseo internally panics in utter terror, realizing the extreme danger he has just jumped into. A resonant chime echoes through the courtyard, silencing the gathered crowd of onlookers. Posing dramatically, the auburn-haired warrior prepares to execute a defensive sword maneuver. Simgil and the onlookers shout in disbelief as they witness Iyojaseo leap into the fray. The hidden dagger clatters onto the stone tiles as the masked assassin retreats into the crowd. Blue waves of spiritual energy swirl around the clashing blades as their duel reaches its peak. Iyojaseo feels the overwhelming tide of their combined inner energy surging directly into his blade. As Iyojaseo struggles to hold his ground, Ibu prepares to unleash his final burst of energy. Thin-Faced Sword arrogantly dares his rival to strike him with everything he has got left. Both duelists let out a deafening battle cry, ready to clash with all their remaining strength. Iyojaseo screams in exasperation, lamenting his terrible luck and their refusal to stop their reckless clash. He despairs as the chaotic situation escalates completely out of his control. A massive beam of blue sword energy erupts from the courtyard, piercing high into the sky. The astonished spectators point toward the sky, loudly marveling at the incredible display of sword chi. He holds his glowing blade high, effortlessly suppressing both fighters with a tremendous aura of spiritual energy. Thin-Faced Sword's eyes widen in sheer terror as he realizes the true nature of the energy. A violent blast of energy erupts, sending all three warriors flying backward in a massive shockwave. Iyojasio's sword slips from his grasp, spinning high into the bright blue sky. Seizing the chaotic moment, the hidden assassin throws another lethal dagger toward the distracted group. The red-haired girl gasps in surprise as a second hidden projectile flies directly toward her head. She freezes in absolute horror as the lethal hidden weapon closes the distance to her face. Suddenly, Iyojasio's airborne sword descends, perfectly deflecting the projectile away from her face in midair. An aerial view shows the three exhausted fighters sprawled across the cracked stone floor of the courtyard. The red-haired girl looks back in shock, seeing the deflected dagger deeply embedded in a wooden pillar. Soguchi and Simyal look at the unconscious warrior in deep awe, questioning his mysterious identity. Back in their room, his companions discuss the jaw-dropping display, still stunned by his skills. As his roommates notice him waking up, Iyojaseo internally panics about having actually fainted. Nursing his headache, Iyojaseo realizes no one will believe his excuses and decides he must quietly escape. Soguchi excitedly welcomes the awakened warrior, declaring his deep admiration for his bravery. Soguchi praises Iyojaseo for heroically rushing into the duel without any hesitation. Iyojaseo looks completely shocked as he suddenly remembers being dragged into the deadly fight. A dramatic thought bubble emphasizes how completely messed up his current situation has become. Sitting on his bed, Iyojaseo blames his uncharacteristic emotional reaction for creating this mess. Soguchi whispers that the entire fort is buzzing with gossip about his heroic feat. Soguchi adds that he also saved the Lord's daughter, shocking the auburn-haired warrior. Iyojaseo internally panics, wondering who this daughter is and if they have even met. A sudden sharp knock sounds as a quick talk on the sliding door draws everyone's attention. Yanwa swings the door open and cheerfully greets her savior as the twin nosebleed hero. Iyojaseo is thoroughly annoyed to see the troublesome girl barging into his room again. A dignified man in elegant black and gold robes enters, sharply rebuking her rudeness. Then pouts, claiming she was only playfully teasing him like an older brother. The dignified lord introduces himself as Mokai Gun and expresses deep gratitude for saving his daughter. Iyojaseo screams internally in absolute shock upon learning the brat is the lord's daughter. Trying to remain humble, Iyojaseo modestly downplays his dangerous intervention as mere coincidence. He politely clasps his hands together, claiming he is unworthy of such personal gratitude. His eyes gleam with sudden calculating greed as he realizes this is a golden opportunity. While Iyojaseo greedily plots how to maximize his payout, the Lord offers him money. Playing the selfless hero, Iyojaseo politely claims he did not save her for money. Surprised by his humility, the Lord asks if he would prefer a prestigious warrior position. He noble-mindedly declines, claiming a wandering warrior like him values his personal freedom too much. Internally, he rejoices at avoiding a permanent position that would surely expose his lack of skills. The Lord then suggests he take on a role instructing the fort's new recruits. As Iyojaseo politely declines, the Lord offers a lucrative role as his daughter's bodyguard. Soguchi chimes in, saying rumors about a master-wielding sword chi have already spread. Soguchi proudly boasts of fanning the rumors, driving the terrified warrior into a panic. Iyojaseo realizes in dread that thugs and rivals will now target him to test him. He decides he must quickly ask for an energy-boosting pill and flee the fort. Iyojaseo politely declines all permanent positions, prompting the Lord to ask what he desires. He acts as though he expected no reward at all before making his request. While struggling with his playful daughter, the Lord pauses in surprise at the word elixir. The Lord mockingly asks if he relies on cheap elixirs like some talentless swordsman. The entire group turns to stare at the auburn-haired warrior with silent, heavy anticipation. Stunned by the unexpected turn of events, Ao remains completely speechless in embarrassment. Quickly trying to save face, he stammers out a nervous, hurried explanation. He clarifies that he actually wanted elixirs to heal the two injured duelists. He passionately argues that healing them would prove the Lord's mercy and attract better warriors. He dramatically gestures, declaring that this generous act will allow the entire fort to flourish. Internally, he weeps in despair for accidentally giving away his reward to other people. Deeply touched by his apparent selflessness, the Lord laughs heartily and agrees to help. The Lord loudly praises his noble warrior spirit, completely unaware of his inner agony. Ao laments his terrible luck, having lost his reward while rumors continue spreading. Refusing to let him go empty-handed, the Lord insists on preparing a special gift. He promises to provide a reward that will not disappoint the noble warrior. The Lord playfully warns that he will be deeply offended if he declines this. Ao smiles weakly, wishing he could just take his reward and run away. The Lord remains deeply moved by his guest's apparent nobility and warm-hearted nature. Reaching into his sleeve, the Lord pulls out a mysterious item to show him. Ao instantly recognizes the lethal, blood-soaked needle belonging to the secretive Tang clan. Lord Mok-Igun acknowledges Ao expertise regarding the blood-soaked needles of the Tang clan. He explains that infusing the needle with inner energy makes it turn red hot, easily piercing a master's defenses. He notes that using this weapon requires substantial inner power and advanced technique. Lord Moke suspects Ao was the assassin's true target, which the panicked protagonist frantically denies. Ao worries that getting further involved in this dangerous plot will only bring him headaches. Noticing Ao distress, the Lord graciously cuts the conversation short to let him rest. Senhua reminds him of his upcoming tournament matches tomorrow and tells him to rest up. Sitting alone in silence, the weight of his precarious situation settles heavily upon him. Ao is suddenly struck with absolute horror upon realizing the tournament begins tomorrow. A new morning dawns over the grand pavilion where the tournament is set to take place. Fearing humiliation and death, he grabs his sword and prepares to flee immediately. He regrets losing out on his reward but resolves to escape before the tournament matches begin. With a firm grip, he secures his sword, ready to make his stealthy getaway. Soguchi wakes up and loudly commends his roommate's dedication to early morning training. Forced to play along, Ao fake boasts about looking forward to the day's matches. He joins the crowd of martial artists examining the newly posted tournament bracket. The onlookers recognize him from yesterday's exploits and whisper in awe about his presence. Overjoyed to find his name omitted from the first 2 days, he celebrates the delay. His eyes widen in shock as he spots the name of Thin-Face Sword on the board. He remembers Ibu's terrifying resilience, fighting relentlessly, even with a massive weapon embedded in his shoulder. The spectators eagerly anticipate the clash, wondering if his injured opponent can even compete. He desperately hopes his opponent withdraws due to injuries, fearing a lethal outcome if they fight. A resonant gong chime echoes through the area, signaling an upcoming announcement. The announcer declares that all tournament participants will receive 2 taels of silver regardless of match outcomes. He greedily realizes 2 taels of silver can easily fund months of food and lodging. He devises a plan to stay until his match, immediately forfeit, collect the silver, and escape. Behind his back, Xianhua stealthily approaches the distracted warrior with a mischievous grin. She suddenly shouts his nickname, startling the deep-in-thought warrior and breaking his concentration. Overcome by sheer dread at her constant presence, he freezes and pale shy. Frantic and overwhelmed, he clutches his head and despairs over why she keeps popping up. He walks briskly down the dirt path, trying to put distance between himself and her. Annoyed, he spins around and demands to know why she is trailing behind him. She playfully claims she is simply walking along her own path, leaving him speechless. He orders her to stop following him, but she cryptically warns him against walking that way. He runs off to escape her, only to suddenly bump into a tall figure ahead. A sudden gasp escapes him as he looks up at the person he just bumped into. He stumbles back upon realizing he has stepped directly into a beautiful swordswoman's path. Turning back with a cold glare, the elegant swordswoman demands to know his business. Blaming Xianhua for his bad luck, he apologizes and claims he merely took a wrong turn. He gazes forward, completely transfixed and caught off guard by her stunning appearance. He is momentarily mesmerized, silently noting that her beauty is truly beyond belief. Xianhua mockingly asks if her master has something on her face, deepening Ao annoyance. The master coldly states that her quarters are restricted and he cannot leave so easily. After the master chastises her, Ao dryly realizes where Xianhua learned her dramatic lines. The elegant master adjusts her posture, preparing to formally address her unexpected visitor. She introduces herself as Do-Yan, Senhua's instructor, acknowledging him for saving her student's life. Reflecting her praise, Ao humbly claims anyone would have acted the same way. Grasping her weapon's hilt, she coolly reminds him that being a benefactor has its limits. Do-yeon refuses to break rules, while Senhwa explains that many men sneak in due to her beauty. Senhwa warns that releasing him easily would cause the watching crowd of men to swarm them. Ao Jaseo wonders when all these spectators gathered, listening to them discuss his rumored prowess with sword chi. He panics upon hearing her martial name the Ice Jade Ice Sword, recognizing its master-level prestige. He steps forward, resolving to act bolder to handle this escalating situation. He dramatically declares he never draws his sword against women, prompting admiration from nearby spectators. The elegant swordswoman's face twitches in silent annoyance at his dramatic and theatrical display. The crowd enthusiastically agrees with his chivalrous stance, praising him for refusing to fight a beauty. Do-yeon silently shifts her stance, placing her hand on her sword hilt. He frantically shouts that he has absolutely no interest in her whatsoever, desperately trying to de-escalate. He dramatically slams his hands down, swearing to cut off his own leg if he ever returns. Worried she is staring at his leg, he continues pleading his complete lack of romantic interest. A sharp clicking sound resonates as she swiftly unleashes a deadly strike from her sheath. Do-yeon demands to know if his words are sincere as she launches a lightning-fast attack. Her sword slashes through the air, creating a dazzling and powerful arc of energy. The strong gust from her near-miss slash leaves him frozen in absolute shock and terror. Do-yeon calmly eyes him, expressing relief that he does not harbor any improper feelings. Holding her blade close to his throat, she notes his resolve seems genuine. She cleanly sheathes her weapon, stating she will trust his word and addressing him as Eo Soyap. He screams internally in sheer terror, deeply shaken by how close he came to dying. Do-yeon turns to leave, stating she will respect his wishes and let him go for now. She suggests postponing their duel for the official tournament before walking away with Senhwa. Ao Jaseo walks away, lamenting the loss of luxury but prioritizing escaping with his life. A spectator enthusiastically yells that he is leaving to avoid becoming a burden to Do-yeon. Another bystander highly praises his noble and considerate nature as a true gentleman swordsman. A leaf falls on his face as he bitterly blames the troublesome girl for cursing him. Ao Jaseo walks exhaustedly across the sandy training grounds, sighing deeply in despair. He worries that he is getting too deeply involved in matters that could expose his identity. He contemplates fleeing back to the mountains to train as soon as this job is finished. He suddenly spots Sim Gyo practicing intensely with his large blade in the early morning. Observing him, Ao Jaseo compares Sim Gyo's exhausting training to his own mountain trials. Sim Gyo continues his heavy swings, sweating from the grueling repetition of his moves. Sim Gyo stops his swing and calls out, asking where Ao Jaseo has been wandering off. Ao Jaseo turns and calmly asks why he was looking for him. Sim Gyo hesitatingly asks the auburn-haired warrior for advice regarding his training. Ao Jaseo is surprised that someone as proud as Sim Gyo is swallowing his pride to ask. He tries to decline, claiming he is just a low-tier nobody who knows nothing of axes. Sim Gyo begs him, insisting a master like him must see flaws he cannot. Dropping to his knees, Sim Gyo laments that his training has completely stalled, bows his head in deep humility, pleading for guidance from the recognized master. Sim Gyo wonders if his progress is blocked by lacking inner energy and relying on raw power. Ao Jaseo casually interrupts him, stating that is not the real issue with his technique. Ao Jaseo asks if he's self-taught from a manual, shocking Sim Gyo, who wonders how he knew. Internally gloating, Ao Jaseo reassures Sim Gyo that he will keep his secret safe. Relieved, Sim Gyo deeply thanks him for his discretion and willingness to help. Ao Jaseo recalls his own past struggles learning martial arts from visual drawings and manuals. He advises Sim Gyo to forget his footwork and let his steps naturally follow his blade. Sim Gyo repeats the advice, trying to grasp the concept of riding the weapon's flow. Sim Gyo's eyes widen as he realizes he was too fixated on raw strength. Sim Gyo initiates a swing, understanding that the heavy weapon creates its own natural momentum. He slides his feet, letting his body smoothly follow the powerful current of his swing. Sim Gyo unleashes a massive, explosive shockwave with a perfectly executed and fluid technique. Sim Gyo laughs handily, completely thrilled by the incredible feeling of his newfound martial power. So-gu-chi points in absolute astonishment, shouting that his friend's axe form has completely changed. Sim Gyo excitedly credits Ao Jaseo's guidance, while So-gu-chi celebrates their incredibly lucky encounter. Nearby, martial artists stop their training, wondering what kind of lucky encounter has occurred. Spectators gather around the sandy grounds, eagerly wishing they could also receive lessons from the master. Ao Jaseo fumes in silent fury, while So-gu-chi loudly begs to be trained next. Ao Jaseo walks away rapidly, leaving his confused companions behind as they call after him. An intense sword duel begins on the wooden tournament platform as the crowd watches. Sim Gyo watches the combatants closely from the sidelines as blades clash with sharp ringing sounds. Sweat drips down Ao Jaseo's face as the overwhelming pressure of the tournament mounts. Trembling with nerves, Ao Jaseo admits to himself that he is too anxious to calm down. Yojasio asks nearby contestants about potential ranks, but another warrior explains he can only reach squad leader. The warrior explains the fortress hierarchy, showing Yojasio a detailed rank pyramid from bottom to top. A victory flag rises as the announcer loudly declares Simgil the winner of his match. Simgil triumphantly raises his sword on the stage, celebrating his hard-earned victory. Yojaseo is relieved by the quiet crowd reaction, planning to quickly forfeit and slip away unnoticed. Simgil modestly downplays his win, but Soguchi insists his success is entirely thanks to Yojaseo. Yojaseo offers a tense, insincere wave, congratulating his victorious friend with a forced smile. He resolves to quickly step up to the arena, forfeit immediately, and escape for good. A sudden presence from behind makes him halt and turn back in confusion. Thin-Face Sword bows respectfully, expressing his deepest gratitude to Io Sohyap. Standing before the gathered warriors, Thin-Face Sword credits the wonderful medicine for his incredibly swift recovery. Yojasio awkwardly responds while Thin-Face Sword praises him for the combat moves he learned previously. Thin-Face Sword fiercely declares his intention to fight with absolute dedication in their upcoming match. Bowing deeply, the green-haired swordsman begs Io Sohyap to grant him another profound lesson. Yojasio stands frozen, his face twisting in complete disbelief at his terrible luck. Soguchi and Simgil react with immense awe at the high-ranking swordsman's humble display. Soguchi starts chanting loudly, rallying the crowd to cheer for Yojasio to show his skills. Soguchi signals a confident thumbs up, driving the pale and furious Yojasio to murderous thoughts. Thin-Face Sword politely gestures for his esteemed opponent to ascend the arena platform first. Ascending the wooden stairs, Yojasio reluctantly accepts that he has no choice but to fight head-on. His footsteps echo softly as he steps onto the wide tournament platform. A loud gong resonates across the crowded courtyard as the two opponents face each other on stage. Yojasio prepares himself, realizing a direct confrontation is now his only option to survive. Thin-Face Sword draws his blade with a sharp flourish, striking an elegant and deadly battle stance. Yojasio nervously recalls the formidable footwork the green-haired swordsman previously showed in battle. He observes the opponent's precise stance, noting it resembles a master who has reached the peak. Sweat beads on his brow as he realizes he must read his opponent's movements to survive. Thin-Face Sword suddenly charges forward at high speed, eagerly requesting Io Sohyap's guidance. Yojasio feels the intense pressure of the charge, wondering if he can even track his opponent's moves. Closing his eyes, he focuses entirely on the sound of footsteps rushing from the left. He is startled as the rushing sounds abruptly shift to his right side. To his absolute shock, Yojasio realizes he can clearly see and track the fast-moving swordsman. Thin-Face Sword is taken aback by the direct eye contact, wondering if his trajectory was read. The green-haired swordsman reassures himself, noting that Yojasio isn't even looking directly at him. Gritting his teeth, Thin-Face Sword intensifies his focus and circles around his opponent. Onlookers marvel at the duel, commenting on the flawless and exquisite nature of the high-speed footwork. A spectator doubts that even Io Sohyap can keep up with such blindingly fast movements. Yojasio looks on in utter bewilderment, realizing the opponent's speed actually feels incredibly slow and clear. He is suddenly struck with cold panic upon spotting a hooded masked assassin hiding in the crowd. The green-haired swordsman charges forward, aiming a swift strike at the red-haired warrior's turn back. Confident his opponent is too slow to react, the green-haired swordsman anticipates an easy strike. Shouting in determination, the green-haired swordsman lunges forward with his blade raised. Spotting a hooded assassin in the crowd preparing a hidden weapon, the red-haired warrior panics in disbelief. The green-haired swordsman grits his teeth in frustration, sweating intensely during his high-speed charge. A sudden change in footwork sends wood dust scattering across the tournament platform. The green-haired swordsman wonders in disbelief if his opponent is dodging purely by sensing his presence. Realizing his high-speed strike completely missed its mark, the green-haired swordsman curses his luck. Gripping his hilt tightly, the green-haired swordsman wonders if his opponent is mocking his speed. A sudden shout startles the red-haired warrior as he desperately scans the arena surroundings. Boasting about his unmatched speed, the green-haired swordsman repositions himself for another swift attack. The red-haired warrior is unnerved after catching a brief glimpse of his opponent's furious face. Swirling winds kick up around the red-haired warrior as he maintains his defensive stance. Sweating under pressure, the red-haired warrior remains deeply focused on tracking the invisible threat. Spotting a red glowing dagger flying through the air, the red-haired warrior recognizes a hidden weapon threat. A tiny projectile streaks from the spectator stands, hurtling directly toward the oblivious combatant on stage. The red-haired warrior turns in alarm, realizing the assassin in the crowd is indeed targeting him. The green-haired swordsman is completely bewildered when his opponent suddenly shifts his stance backward. With lightning reflexes, the red-haired warrior draws his blade to intercept the incoming projectile. The red-haired warrior panics internally, finding the flying weapon much slower than he originally anticipated. Fearing his defensive timing is completely off, the red-haired warrior nervously braces for impact. With a swift and desperate swing, he unleashes his sword to block the incoming attack. Sparks fly as the red-haired warrior's sword makes direct contact with the flying red dagger. The deflected projectile ricochets off his blade, creating a blinding flash of metallic sparks. The precise contact of his sword successfully redirects the lethal trajectory of the flying dagger. Clutching his sword, the red-haired warrior is struck by a sudden sense of familiar coincidence. The green-haired swordsman is utterly terrified, mistaking the deflection's residue for legendary sword energy. Believing his opponent is unleashing his ultimate power, the green-haired warrior commits to charging. Shouting a vow to fight in earnest, the green-haired warrior is instantly struck across the face. The heavy counter-strike blasts the green-haired swordsman backward, forcing his weapon from his hand. The crowd gasps in shock as the bloodied swordsman falls while his opponent stands stub. Green-haired swordsman lies motionless on the wooden platform as his opponent kneels in disbelief. Breathing heavily, the exhausted red-haired warrior can only mutter a silent sigh of sheer relief. Staring down at his hands, the red-haired warrior tries to process the sudden chaotic turn of events. Trembling and bleeding from his nose, the red-haired warrior wonders if he truly blocked a chi-infused weapon. A massive celebratory banner appears above, marking a dramatic and unexpected victory for the warrior. The spectators enthusiastically praise Io Soyap for showing mercy and holding back his deadly sword energy. The crowd erupts in cheers, highly admiring the red-haired warrior's incredible character and restraint. Wearing a forced smile, the red-haired warrior privately notes that surviving the misunderstanding is all that matters. Tournament announcer strikes the gong, loudly proclaiming that Io Soyop will face Poison Wolf Ibu tomorrow. The announcer excitedly lists his upcoming match against Taoist Doyen before asking the winner for a speech. The red-haired warrior quietly slips away, walking down a stone path to escape the crowd's attention. Bitterly examining his reward coin, the red-haired warrior fumes over being exploited to attract more applicants. Snapping out of his anger, the red-haired warrior quickly realizes he has no time to waste. The red-haired warrior halts in his tracks as a mocking voice suddenly calls out from behind. Glancing back, the red-haired warrior shudderingly notes that the newcomer's creepy laugh makes his skin crawl. The red-haired warrior instantly recognizes the unpleasant newcomer as the despicable Jang Sil. Jang Chil mockingly reminds him of a past match where he supposedly smashed his opponent's face. Smiling maliciously, the cruel fighter taunts his target about previously breaking his fingers during their encounter. Glaring with rising fury, the red-haired warrior listens as his arrogant tormentor threatens to break him again. A sharp blade slices through the air, leaving a blur of multiple metallic afterimages. The red-haired warrior flinches as a sword taps his shoulder, while Jang Chil notes he doesn't know what trick was used to defeat Thin-Face Sword. Grinning maliciously while holding his blade, Jang Chil threatens to rip off his opponent's mask and expose his true identity to everyone.